So Kamala Harris's VP pick is in, and it's Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota. And, we have been doing political profiles on many of the politicians that have been vying for the presidential spot. Well, now that we officially have two VPs, we're going to go ahead and do those individuals as well, so that we can give you another snapshot of who the 2IC, the second in command, is going to possibly be for the United States of America. Now, as you know, I'm a retired Army officer, and I was active duty in the infantry with multiple year-long combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as some year-long tours in South Korea, North Africa, and Kuwait. So almost about 5 years of overseas tours when you add them all up. Kimberly asked me what my thoughts were on Tim Walz's military service controversy from last week. And if you want to know my view on the matter, stay tuned to the end. And if you want to skip ahead, we have chapters in the description. But to quote one of my brigade commanders when I was a company commander, use precise words precisely.
Well, Kamala Harris has Tim Walz on her campaign website, but there's not a single policy listed.
Yeah, we're scrolling that right now.
It's pretty atypical of a politician running for office. Nope, it's all about donate, 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 and even volunteering. But they do have some biographies full of fluff.
Yeah, so we'll filter this out because it was multiple paragraphs on Walz when he's been added to Kamala Harris's website. So he served 24 years in the Minnesota National Guard, retiring as a master sergeant. Again, more on that later. He was a teacher and a football coach, and he was a congressman in Minnesota from the 1st Congressional District, and he's currently the sitting governor of Minnesota.
Now, we're going to look at the records here, and we'll go from the most recent, his current governorship, to his far past, because character often remains the same.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So let's look at his governorship. First, I'd like to point out that people vote with their feet, as Ron DeSantis often says. Ron DeSantis claims that he has met a lot of constituents with Minnesota accents, and I'm not even going to try to mimic it.
No, that would be bad for both of us.
I'm not nice enough either. He started as governor in 2018. Minnesota's population has grown 2.3%. Now, that is better than a place famous for losing its population with its current governor of California and its reek of sulfur governor. Since 2018, California has lost 0.79% of its population, so almost 1%. So, Minnesota growing by 2.3% sounds good.
Yeah,
right?
I guess so.
Well, Texas since 2018 has grown by 8.3%, even outpacing Florida's rate of 8.23%.
God bless Texas.
Yep. Well, per U.S. News and World Report, before COVID, Minnesota's economy matched the U.S. growth rate. Since late 2020, the state's growth lags the U.S.'s by 5.5 percentage points, and non-farm payrolls have grown by 0.5% since Walz became governor versus 5.8% for the U.S.
Yeah, and there's some heavy hitters that are there. 3M, I believe, is based there. So, are they losing money? Who knows? But there are some heavy hitters there. So I was surprised when you researched that data and we saw that number.
Well, policies affect business.
That's exactly right.
Well, per the Washington Times, despite taking office in 2019 with a $17.6 billion state budget surplus, Mr. Walz has slapped Minnesotans with a series of tax increases, and businesses usually don't like extra taxes.
Nope.
So that surplus has been spent, and Mr. Walz has imposed a 0.7% payroll tax on employers.
Okay.
Half of which may be passed on to employees, making Minnesota among a handful of states with a payroll tax.
Okay.
A 50-cent tax on more than $100 in retail deliveries except for food.
Okay.
So it's second only to Colorado in offering a retail delivery tax.
Now, is that specifically, is that like affecting like Amazon and eBay and things like that?
Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's pay even more. Why don't we?
Well, as a congressman, per GovTrack US, he has the second most absentee percentage in votes compared to all other representatives, missing 32.6% of his votes while a congressman. That's a third. That's a third of all of the votes that he was representing the 1st Congressional District that he just said, I don't feel like showing up.
And he wants to be second in command. If I were doing a job interview and I called up a previous employer to, do some research on a job candidate, and I found out they missed a third of their work,
right,
I would not be hiring them.
Yeah. I mean, this number is only acceptable in Major League Baseball, where that would be an amazing batting percentage. But still, this is not baseball. This is government, and he is supposed to be representing his constituents, and he's only doing it 2/3 of the time. So he's not really working for you, and that's just kind of embarrassing. Now, if you compare the work ethic and the votes missed, Kamala Harris is not much better than he was when she was a sitting senator. She missed 30.2% of her votes.
I would not be hiring her either. Now, if those percentages were for like predicting Houston weather, I would say that's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. So baseball and weather. Okay. All right. I'll take that. But let's put it in an example. Ted Cruz, who is the junior senator from Texas, only missed 9.6% of his available votes for his entire time in Congress as a senator. And so if you look at this heat map / bubble chart, you can see how the voting record on average for Congressman Tim Walz at the time you can see that you have the very far left is in that blue purple, and then the very far right is in the red, and you can see kind of this heat map of where people were voting on the majority of
on
their time.
GovTrack's website.
On GovTrack's website. Now, he's showing as kind of right in the middle. But my question, and I asked you about this, my question was that what his available votes were, and anything that he missed was counted as a zero or an average, so it wouldn't have been a positive number or a negative number, which would move him left or right on the chart. It kind of kept him in the middle. So did he kind of cheat the system by not voting or showing up for votes, and then have his votes averaged out? So if you take a look at the top of the ticket for Kamala and Walz, you have her all the way over.
She's all the way over. So even
left.
if you want to say, oh, well, she missed a lot too, it's still not going to help her very much.
I mean, she is all the way over. I think she's trying to break the barrier. It's people are talking about glass ceilings. It's a sideways wall that she's trying to.
She's
burst
knocking
through.
on it hard.
Yeah. So we just wanted to show you those kind of statistics, but he's not really showing up to work, and hopefully we can ask him why he hasn't done a single interview either, as well as the top of the ticket.
Maybe when he was letting Minneapolis burn from the BLM riots, that was a day he missed work.
Yeah, it could be.
Of course, his wife was very busy sniffing some tires. So,
yeah, on our community tab and on our Twitter feed, I try and be a little Babylon Bee-esque with some cartoons that I try and do, and I think I'm getting a little better. But still, this one totally, when she had her quote of leaving the windows open so that she could smell the burning rubber and the burning tires and live in the moment, it totally made me think of the surfing scene in Apocalypse Now, with Robert Duvall playing this colonel who is just obsessed with surfing, and he goes on this soliloquy of how he loves the smell of napalm in the morning, and he goes, that gasoline smell, that smell smells like victory. And so I did a little thing where she's kind of mimicking the same thing, but is using the burning rubber tires as her.
If you're a governor, and even the governor's wife, I mean, you're supposed to love your state and the city in which you live, and the last thing you want is for it to burn. Like, do you want your house to burn? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it makes zero sense. I mean, I can't think that way.
We just needed a photograph of her with a fiddle, and the whole scene would have been
Nero watching Rome burn.
Yeah, exactly.
So, also on his record, he has a history of being a teacher.
Okay.
I believe it was social studies. Well, per Politico, a former student of his by the name Hurd recalled that Walz did not overload students with homework, which anytime I hear that, I'm like, okay, they're a little soft. He was not really a homework guy, but challenged them in other ways.
Okay.
He made them wrestle with issues like the Cambodian genocide and a number of genocides, and also how the French government treated its Muslim citizens. And I'm like, when I was in social studies, we talked about our government, and how it was structured and certain history. And occasionally we relate it to current events, but genocide was more of an SAT word for me.
Okay.
But yeah, Walz has been known to say, I lived in China, and as I've said, I've been there about 30 times. I don't like any place enough to go 30 times. That's kind of weird. Better have some business there. He says, I don't fall into the category that China necessarily needs to be an adversarial relationship. I totally disagree, and I think we need to stand firm on what they're doing in the South China Sea, but there may be areas of cooperation we can work on, he said in an interview with AgriPulse Communications. I disagree with all that. But okay. I mean, they are adversarial. They're trying to undermine us.
So, I mean, you have there's a difference between competition, and everybody said that competition is good. It's good for consumers, but they don't play by the rules. They are well known to do industrial espionage, stealing proprietary information and reverse engineering things, and what are you going to do? Sue them in a court of law in a communist country?
Good luck with that.
You're not going to win, and so then you have freedom of navigation that they're interrupting in the South China Sea. They're claiming almost all of it. You have a lot of our allies that are in the area that are being their neck is just being stomped on. You have the Philippines that the Chinese Coast Guard has actually killed some Philippine sailors and injured them, as well as destroying equipment and things like that. So it's definitely an adversarial relationship, and China has stated that they want to remove the United States hegemony from existence. They don't want the United States to have that power, and they want to take it over. And their goal is to be dominant all over the world by 2050, and they're definitely on the way to do that if we have representatives like this that are praising China.
Yeah, I mean, there's the saying, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. It sounds like he wants to be bosom buddies.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to his being a teacher. Walz taught the same year as the Tiananmen Square crackdown by the communist regime against pro-democracy protesters. He later started a company to organize trips to China, so that's why he's been so many times. But why does he want to take people there so much? Anyway, and he has, in his remarks, that he's visited the country so many times, conducting summer education trips to China. The New York Post reported that he said, after his initial travel there, no matter how long I live, I will never be treated that well again.
Okay.
Maybe some bribery? I don't know.
Apparently the U.S. sucks, apparently, to him.
Yeah, it's suspicious for sure. To boot, he honeymooned in China. Honeymoon.
Right.
Bermuda, no, not good. Fiji, no, not good. Let's go to China, honey.
Right.
And he intentionally had his wedding date on the 5-year anniversary of the Tiananmen Square. And he claims that it's because wanted to remember.
Okay.
I'm sure there are better ways to remember your wedding anniversary.
Right.
Like my favorite football team went to the Super Bowl on this date or something. I don't know anything.
I don't know either. But, when, you think about it, some of the things that China does, and this is one of those things that make you go, But one of the things that he did during COVID is the same thing that China does, and effectively it was the social credit score. And so during COVID lockdowns, he had hotlines set up so that neighbors could rat out other neighbors for violating COVID. And so that is literally the exact same thing that China is doing with their social credit scores, where if you're not towing the communist line perfectly, your neighbors can rat you out and they can up their score and lower your score. And I think that affects, being able to get some commercial goods and government jobs and things like that. So he borrowed a page right out of China's playbook, literally, and had this social credit score rat squad out searching for COVID-19, people that were violating his draconian lockdowns that he had. In fact, I want to say there was a grandmother that had a restaurant and bar that just recently had an article and in an interview on Fox News warning the rest of the United States who Tim Walz is. And, she was just absolutely shut down. But she saw that, big box stores and liquor stores that sell alcohol, obviously they're liquor stores, and she's a bar that obviously sells alcohol. She was not allowed to be open, and the liquor stores were allowed to be open and sell things. And so, he cherry picked on which businesses that he was going to do, and she finally she had to open. She was going bankrupt. She had to open, and they arrested her and jailed her for 90 days. She missed her wedding anniversary. She missed Christmas with her family, all because she dared to violate Tim Walz's draconian COVID measures. And, if you are looking to be a freedom-loving citizen of the United States, this is not your guy.
No, because if they try to do another COVID, what kind of links is he going to propose? And
yeah, I would just say that he is as far left now as Kamala is, and with Kamala choosing somebody, this actually really kind of surprised me. I thought she was going to go kind of the safe route and do a middle of the road, but this is straight up a two-tier progressive ticket, like all the way over to the far left.
Well, I think she's going to want someone to back her policies, and so, when she's out there trying to make herself sound different from Biden's policies, no, you're not going to pick someone who would choose different policies from you, because if you don't want to be arguing with someone, you're second in command, and who's going to disrupt your legacy if for some reason you're not able to execute, your presidency.
Well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've always said that typically, the VP and Vance has said this as well. Typically the VP pick does not matter. It has negligible impact on the election. However, typically what you see is you want to use the VP to fill a capability gap that you have, whether it's with this particular voting block or that particular voting block, a state that you might need to pick up. But Minnesota's been reliably blue, so that it wasn't for that.
Yeah, exactly. With the party of the DEI, like they don't care about differences of thought. So what's the difference she's looking to pick up? White men.
Yeah, I mean, and
For once, you matter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she had that, and I think he was the headline speaker, white dudes for Kamala, and so he was the headline speaker because he's a white dude. And one of the interesting takeaways from there was the socialism, in another word, is just neighborliness. I mean, one person's socialism is another person's neighborliness, and I would say that should beyond frighten you. It should frighten you to no end, because he is straight up saying that socialism is good, and that is his policy, and that is what he is going to try and drive down our throats. And Kamala, being as far left as she is, that will be a touchstone. Now, I just we talk about AOC and Bernie Sanders, and they talk about democratic socialism. As we have seen in Venezuela, socialism is democratic once.
Yes, you can vote it in. You cannot vote it out.
You can't. Once you are vote for democratic socialism, that's the last vote that you get that matters, because you can't vote yourself out of it. They just the information will be controlled, the economics will be controlled, the goods and services will be controlled. That you get one vote, and once you use that to your detriment, there is no going back.
Yeah, and if you think people are just being hyperbolic, like, oh, it's not that bad, we read about it in history class or whatnot in schools. I mean, really, do you know that much history from our public education system? I mean, Karl Marx was a blip on my history books, and now I'm like, whoa, we should have talked about this way more.
Right.
But
I can promise they're talking about it now.
Look up people that have immigrated here from communist places, and they say, no, don't do this. Listen to them. There's a reason why they're saying it.
There's a reason why they escaped that country in order to come here.
Yeah.
Honestly. All right. Here's the part that some of you may have been waiting for. We've gotten comments, direct messages to us to get my opinion on this. Kimberly asked my opinion on it as well. It was actually before some of the information came out, and I had told Kimberly what I thought had happened, and it turned out it's exactly what happened. So we're going to go into the controversy surrounding Tim Walz's military service. Now, I just want to point out he enlisted when he was 17 years old. He served 20 years. Now, let me get to the rest of the time. He served 20 years in the Minnesota National Guard before retiring. He had his paperwork turned in to retire, and then 9/11 happened. 9/11 happened. And so he decided to not retire and to re-enlist for 6 years. Re-enlist for 6 years. There is a great deal of honor to be said for that, to after 9/11 happened, to re-enlist after you had decided to retire. Okay, Great props. Can't take anything away from the man for doing that. Now, he was a master sergeant, and that is an E8, enlisted 8. And the E8 is the pay grade. Oftentimes, it's kind of disrespectful to call people by their pay grade. It happens. Hey, there's an E5 over there, which is a sergeant, or hey, there's a E7 over there.
Well, most civilians don't know all the titles, and
Sure.
so people know what numbers are.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. So, but anyway, he was an E8, which is the second highest rank that an enlisted soldier can achieve. And that is the rank of master sergeant, and that's what he was retiring as. So he re-enlisted, and he re-enlisted for 6 years. Now, in doing so, he had the ability, or had the opportunity, to become a command sergeant major, and in a artillery battalion. And so I've heard a lot of people talking about that. Oh, he was the commander. Let's make sure that we're using those precise words precisely. The commander of a battalion is an officer, a lieutenant colonel. The command sergeant major is the senior enlisted advisor to that battalion commander. And if you get to a brigade command sergeant major, you're the senior enlisted advisor to the brigade commander, who is a full bird colonel. If you're a division command sergeant major, you're the senior enlisted advisor to a division commander, which is a 2-star general, and so on. So oftentimes the position of command sergeant major, one, you're the senior enlisted advisor to the commander, but two, you're there for troop morale. That's really kind of your job. You don't really have too many duties and responsibilities. I mean, you have the professional development of first sergeants, company first sergeants, and possibly even sergeant first classes and things like that. But on the by and by, you're responsible to be the senior enlisted advisor, and troop morale is really kind of what it is. And so now you're helping out on as that advisor to the commander on the type of skill level tasks that soldiers need to go through, or skill level tasks that squad leaders need to go through, etc. So they have input, right? But again, that's an advisor role. So I've heard erroneous reports that he was the commander of troops, and that is not what a command sergeant major is. They are in charge of the battalion, as so far much as being that advisor to the actual commander of the battalion, who is the actual owner of the battalion, right? So he got a conditional promotion, and I use the term frocking. So he was frocked from master sergeant to command sergeant major. Command sergeant major, again, is an E9. So it is a promotion. It's a pay raise and things like that. But it was conditional. So he had not gone to the Sergeant Major's Academy that's out in Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And it's a 2-year school. It's a 2-year school, and you need to do a combination of in-person training or attendance at the school, as well as correspondence courses or e-learning. Although I bet e-learning wasn't as big. So, but you had a box of books, and you had correspondence stuff that you had to do and submit in. So the thing about the school and having that promotion is that you need to serve 2 years in the position after graduating the school in order to maintain that rank. Okay, so that's key. It's not that it's you have to go through the 2-year school and it's happening simultaneously. 2-year school, you've served 2 years, and now you get to keep. It's 2 years after you graduate. So it's 2 years through the school, and then you graduate, and then 2 more years that you have to serve in order to maintain that rank and be that rank on a permanent basis. And he did not. He did not do that. He made it retired in 2005, and so he did not do the 2 years in rank, nor did he finish the course. He didn't finish the course either. So there's a double no-go right there. So he didn't finish the course, and he didn't maintain his 2 years after graduating the course, again, which is a moot point because he didn't finish it. So when he retired as a master sergeant because he got demoted. And that sounds harsh, but he had the rank. They took it away because he didn't earn it. And he retired as a master sergeant in E8. Still a very, very honorable service. He got an honorable discharge, and it's a great accomplishment to retire as an E8. That's still a very high rank.
Yes, but the problem is not only did he lie about it, but also people used the incorrect title, and he did not correct them.
Right.
Now, I asked you, is this a case of stolen valor? Now, it's not as obvious as like someone, if I walked in with your military uniform
right.
and tried to use it to some sort of financial gain, that would be a very obvious instance. But I think you said it has to be used for some sort of financial purposes,
right.
correct? Well, he ran for office with the incorrect title and like on his website and various places and didn't correct people. I mean, I don't know how much of a tipping point it was for him to get voted into Congress, to be voted in as a governor with a higher rank.
Right. So, you know,
I mean, it could be argued. I mean, it'll never go anywhere, but still, it could be argued.
An argument can be, you can argue anything. Anybody can argue anything that they want. I honestly wouldn't put it. It would have to be looking at UCMJ and looking at the federal law, you know, to have it be stolen valor, that he used an incorrect and imprecise, rank in order to benefit him in some monetary way. An argument could be made that congressmen get paid a salary, right? And so he used a incorrect title, a title that he did not maintain. He did not retire as a command sergeant major, but he utilized that in order to get a congressional seat. Now, could an argument be made that by using that he was able to solicit additional campaign dollars, and therefore that is a financial?
Yeah,
so
I think he bragged that he was the highest person that served in Congress.
Okay, the highest enlisted.
Ranking.
Men in Congress.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, that's I don't even know if there were any other E8s. It might have been true even if he was an E8, but still he was not an E9 at the time of his retirement. Now let's talk about the years of service. So he signed up again for. So we've kind of identified the rank issue. He did not retire as a command sergeant major. His websites are all being sanitized. The Kamala Harris, Tim Walz campaign website has been changed. It now says he had achieved the rank of command sergeant major rather than retired as a command sergeant major. Again, we're splitting hairs here, and again, that use precise words precisely. So the end result, he is a retired master sergeant in E8. Now let's talk about the what's surrounding the terms of his re-enlistment. So he re-enlisted for 6 years, but he retired. He only did 4 of them, right? He only did
how do you get away with that?
Yeah. So we see open letters being written by military spouses, and so obviously they didn't serve in the military, but military spouses are writing open letters and opinion columns and saying that if somebody is questioning what had happened, then you're a bad human being and you're not really for veterans. The thing is being precise about all of this stuff. So in looking at his retirement, he retired. He did not finish his 6 years in re-enlistment. He retired 4 years into his 6 years. Okay, so how did he do that? And you asked me, and I said it's because it's the National Guard, and it was part of the Good Old Boy Network, and he somehow did the Good Old Boy Network. Now, his former brigade command sergeant major. The former brigade command sergeant major. So you have the battalion, and then they have the brigade, and then the division, and then you have the command sergeant major of the Minnesota National Guard. So that literally is the highest enlisted soldier in the state of Minnesota as it pertains to the National Guard, right? So the brigade command sergeant major, who should have received the retirement paperwork, is on record saying that Command Sergeant Major then Walz did not turn in or did not inform him of his intent to retire. Okay, so he immediately went around his chain of command. The battalion commander didn't know about it either. The Command Sergeant Major of the Minnesota National Guard is also on record as saying that he did not get a copy of the paperwork or know anything about the paperwork. So Tim Walz, he did in the Army, we say it in jest, he did a drug deal somewhere to get his enlistment scratched. Now, that's how that happened. I mean, it was just the good old boy network, and sometimes that happens in the National Guard, but it just happens that way. Now, let's talk about deployments. Because there was a significant portion of last week where people were saying that he abandoned his unit. And a lot of the news networks are quick to point out that he retired in March of 2005, but the unit did not receive orders to deploy until July of 2005, after he retired. And so people are like, this is a closed case. He couldn't have known that his unit was deploying. And they got the orders afterwards. Let me be clear. I'm going to put up an example graphic that I've made, and it is an example of a deployment slate of what units are going to which campaign, whether it's Operation Iraqi Freedom, OIF, or Operation Enduring Freedom, OEF, to support the global war on terror. So it is not that the U.S. military has a big old dartboard, and a month prior to deploying units, they take a big dart and they throw it at that dartboard and go, it looks like it's the Minnesota National Guard that's
and
deploying.
Then the soldiers find out the next day they're going.
And then the soldiers find out. That stuff is done 2 to 3 years in advance. 2 to 3 years in advance. The deployment slate is, and it has all the units. It has the major brigades and battalions and divisions. At the time, the Army was experimenting with, instead of having a division have its organic units, it was going to have this UEX, this universal command structure, where a division headquarters would deploy as a command node, and then other units would plug and play underneath it. So it wasn't the traditional, the 82nd Airborne is deploying and it's taking 1st, 2nd, and 3rd brigades of the 82nd Airborne and all their enablers all at the same time. So the 82nd Division headquarters would go, and then there would be a hodgepodge of different brigade combat teams and battalion separates and things like that would be attached to them. And the Army did that in order to increase flexibility, right? So make things plug and play. So anyway, the command slate is out, and this is unfortunate for Tim Walz, but the brigade command sergeant major and the Minnesota command sergeant major said that Tim Walz, then a battalion command sergeant major, attended meetings. Now, as a battalion command sergeant major, he was sitting along the wall. He was not at any of the tables, more than likely, because it was all, a lot of bigwigs. But he was sitting along the wall, and not saying anything, but that he was in attendance when the slates were all being discussed and talked about for the Minnesota National Guard. Now, he didn't have any input. While an E9 is an amazing rank, being a battalion E9 and talking about the entire Minnesota National Guard, it's stay over there and you'll be able to participate, but you don't need to be jumping in and saying stuff. But the thing is he would be seeing the slide decks. Yep. He would be seeing what is about to come down the pipeline, and his superiors have confirmed that he was present for those briefings, and so he knew it was coming down the pipeline. Again, that's knowing that it's coming down the pipeline is different than the unit actually receiving its orders. The unit knows it's going to deploy before you receive orders. The reason that you receive orders is because the National Guardsmen would need to be activated. So they would come on active duty in order to deploy, and they need orders to make sure all of that happens, right? So they and there needs to be a specified date that deployment is going to last. A lot of times, sometimes it's open-ended, but it needs to have a start date and an end date, and you can have orders extended and things like that. So, but anyway, the unit knew it was going. They hadn't received orders, because when they get orders, then all of a sudden they start, getting ready to go on to active duty. And then they accumulate active duty time and things like that. So, but anyway, when push comes to shove, he knew his unit was going to Iraq. He knew that was going to happen. So the argument that he retired and then the unit got orders and so he wouldn't have known anything about it is just disingenuous. And I would not say disingenuous. It's the media. They don't know. They don't know what they're talking about.
They don't know better.
Right?
Yeah.
They just don't know what they're talking about. They're just doing math, and they don't understand how it actually works. And so that's one of the reasons why veterans are speaking up, because we do know how it works. Okay, so we have the rank, we have the enlistment, we have the whether or not he knew his unit was going to deploy, and whether or not he abandoned his unit. So the kind of the nail in the coffin of that is that he informed his brigade command sergeant major that he would deploy with his troops to Iraq. All right. That's according to the brigade command sergeant major. So he knew he was deploying, and he said that I am going to deploy with my troops. And just so everybody understands, there's only one in a battalion. There's only one in a brigade command sergeant major, right? And so people want those positions. They want to get there. So Tim Walz was occupying a position that somebody would have wanted. Another E8 would have wanted to be the command sergeant major. I mean, it's a professional development. And so he kind of robbed, that slot. He occupied that slot without any intention of deploying or apparently finishing the command sergeant major academy, because he was going to run for Congress. Right, and so that's really kind of what that happened. Now, the final controversy is his usage or implication that he deployed to combat. And so we're going to listen to this clip, and we're going to see, what precise words he was using precisely. Okay, so we're going to listen to this thing.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army, and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at. We won't.
We can make sure those weapons of war that I carried in war will never be used. Right? So this is what people are saying, that he's implying that he had been to combat. I mean, well, not implying. He's saying I carried him in war. He's saying I deployed to combat. Now, there is, so there are news reports that have said that he misspoke. And it's the surrogates and campaign staff for the Harris-Walz campaign have been going on news stations and saying, look, he misspoke. They dug up, this is what they're trying to do. They dug up something from years ago, and they're using it, kind of like J.D. Vance's cat comments or cat lady comments and stuff like that. So, pot, I'd like to introduce you to Kettle. But still, they say he misspoke. Okay, but the thing is he has not, this is the biggest heartburn I have, the whole thing. He personally has not come out and addressed the issue. He has not come out and addressed he has not gone on CNN. He has not had a public address where he just goes and admits to all of this stuff that he has been benefiting from.
Kamala Harris really did pick a like-minded spirit animal.
Yeah, exactly. So he has not, he has just hunkered down, and he's had the media defending him. He's had the campaign staff defending him and changing websites to reflect that he didn't retire as a command sergeant major. He's had spouses of military veterans and liberal military veteran organizations write open letters and everything. They're all Democrats, so of course they want to do this. But the point is what he needs to do is he needs to get out and say, look, I made a mistake. I embellished. I misspoke. I didn't use precise words. So let's just, for an example, as an infantry officer, it is an Army infantry officer. It is a big deal for infantry officers to go to Ranger School. Mm-hmm. It is a huge deal. And if you do not have a Ranger tab, you have to be 5 times better than any other infantry officer that has a Ranger tab just to be considered like average. I mean, it is what it is. So I never graduated from Ranger School, but let's do a quick word thing. Have you ever been to Ranger School? Yes, I went to Ranger School.
Okay.
I would say that if I left it at that, that is an implication.
People would assume
that I graduated the course.
That you finished.
That I graduated the course.
I took a private flying lesson. I am not a certified pilot.
Well, those are a lot of words. But to say I went to Ranger School. Did you go to Ranger School? Yes, I went to Ranger School. I would say that is a lie by omission. Mm-hmm. Right? That is a lie by omission. I went to Ranger School and I did not graduate. That is being truthful and being honorable, and it's easy to just say, "Yeah, I went to Ranger School. Of course, I did." But that's not what happened here. He is letting these ankle biters for him become a big deal because 1, he's not addressing it, and 2, when other people repeat it, he doesn't correct them.
Yep. Well, I mean, why would he address the public when the media is doing all the work for him?
Exactly.
I mean, and if they misstate something, it's on them, not on him.
Right. No, exactly. And like I said, he's had all these surrogates. So again, these liberal veterans organizations that have gotten wives of soldiers and veterans to talk about it. There's a column in USA Today, an opinion piece by a wife of a soldier that says how dare he? Well, the thing is he's running for the number 2 spot to be the vice president of the United States. Of course, you need to challenge it. Of course you need to challenge it.
People are going to do their research, and it needs to be accurate, not some rewritten history that Google Gemini probably produced.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I hope that from a veteran, I am not disparaging Tim Walz's service. To serve in the military for 25 years is honorable, and he has a honorable discharge. He just did not retire at the rank that he told people retired at, and he did not deploy to combat that he made people imply that he had gone to combat. So that's just, it is what it is, and hopefully that puts it to bed. He needs to get out and talk to the American people and own it, and that would be the honorable thing to do.
Yeah,
so that's a veteran's opinion on it,
and probably especially before he debates J.D. Vance, which I hope happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is at least one VP debate, and I hope that happens as well. But this is going to conclude our deep dive into Governor Tim Walz. We'll do one obviously for Senator J.D. Vance as well. But thank you so much for tuning in to Azimuth Podcast. If you please like and subscribe and share this video, we'd really appreciate it. It helps out the channel so much, and it doesn't cost you anything. It's free. It's free to do that, but it really does help out with the various algorithms that push our content out there. So again, thank you so much for tuning into Azimuth Podcast. Please stay tuned after these messages.